October, like the beginning for us again?
Oh, the second session?
I need to take them.
Yeah, I'm gonna do it too. Oh, good. Yeah, I'm gonna do that one with the keychain and then the, advanced class. Self defense.
Cool.
I used to teach it. Except now I'm old and much more brittle. I went home inspired because I always had half to bed end of the week. So I went, no. I went home inspired with my sons who are like 6 foot and over. He popped my rib out. He had like grabbed me from behind and I went, it seriously made the, oh, so bad, I couldn't breathe. But then we just put it back in. Just get up.
Just apply pressure, right? It'll be fine.
I was seriously like standing there for like, it felt like forever, I'm sure it wasn't that long, but it just felt really long. Just trying to get air. But I felt much better afterwards.
Okay.
I love this bar, it's
All
fun.
that energy levels.
Oh, yeah.
Focus spots. Where? I don't know.
So we're much more fragile now than I used to be.
He said,
I
the
guess.
University of Central Missouri. and the
He's like,
Department of
"Mom, I
Public
didn't
Safety are
squeeze
excited
out."
to
I'm
announce
like-
the new parking lots on the west side of the campus are now open for us, for use by holding student parking.
I told him I didn't want it, I was trying to show his,
That's for you.
his
You're the one.
girlfriend is small, like very
Yeah.
tiny, and she's like all of like 5 foot. And she, he picks her up and she can't do anything, I'm like, it's just your arms.
Just
Yeah,
those
all this
arms
other fun
and
stuff
the
you do. So I was trying to show her like, see, even if you grab something tiny enough, and then he like, tightly, she's like, I love the rap class, I love it, he does such a good job, thank you very much.
Are you hanging out?
Yes.
Alright, cool. Alright, so I've been heckled for my title, but I've never claimed to be creative. So we're gonna go over just these few really basic things. We all know there's good things about money. So like what? Give me examples. I know you've got some.
Buy
You
things.
can buy things like food, like those cool shoes, like trips to Costa Rica. What other things? What other things can money get you?
Guess
An
it's
education.
respect, maybe.
Respect, success. What do you say?
An education.
And education. You said happiness.
It can make you happy.
It can sometimes, but it doesn't. It doesn't buy everything. The good thing about money, sorry, is that even if you start with just a little bit of it, you can always grow it. So if it's $5 today, you know, if you put it in the right place, within a month, that could have interest. And so finding out what to do with your money, even if you only have a little bit, is going to be in your best interest. And you're young. Most people. So time is on your side. So if you start saving now and you start planning for the future now, then by the time you get there, in say retirement, for example, then you'll be in a safe place, in a good place to retire. You'll have enough money that you can live comfortably without having to worry constantly about how you're going to get to the next meal. And it's not about what you make. So even, for example, I don't make that much money, but I don't spend a lot of money. And so it's not about what I make, it's about how much of what I make that I keep. And knowing how and what to keep is based on wants versus needs. So we all have things that we need, things that are essential for our survival, like food, like shelter, like clothing, tuition, fees, things that we have set expenses for that we really can't live without. And then there's things that we can live without. We all have examples of those. What are things that you buy that you really wish that you wouldn't have bought them?
Fast food.
Fast food, yes. Yes. Nothing. Anything?
Video games.
Video
Like, when I
games.
get older, I'm like, wish I had that money I used in video games when I was younger.
Okay, so you purchase things and sometimes you regret purchasing them. And that's just natural, especially if you have an excess of income. Suddenly you're like, oh, I can get all this cool stuff, and then later in life you're like, I don't have all this money, but I have all this junk. So you can always sell those things for money. Craigslist, eBay. You could just solicit them out. There's like local like swap and shop pages on Facebook that you can just sell things. So there's always ways to get that money back, but you'll never get your full investment. The bad thing about money is that we all have to have it. And even if we only have a little bit, we have to make that work from one paycheck to the next, or from 1 month to the next. The other bad thing is that in order to get more money, you have to have self-discipline, which I know isn't exactly everybody's favorite thing. It's like developing a new workout routine, or committing to something that you don't really like. Like, for example, if you have a job, for example, at Domino's, and you just hate going there, but you need the income. So it's that self-discipline to keep doing something that you really don't like doing just to get by.
You know you like that job.
I hate working at
Stop
Domino's
lying.
because it's so boring. We get tired of making the same pieces over and over again.
You just gotta
You
get
don't get
creative.
tired of making money, do you?
Oh,
Exactly.
I don't.
No. You better accept that job.
So with money, you have to know what you're doing with it. And there's different ways that you can save money, that you can keep money, and different places to keep that money. Who has a checking account? Okay. Who has a savings account? Who has something other than those two things? What do you have?
We have CDs.
You have CDs. Okay. I almost put that on here, but I thought that's probably too advanced.
Well, I'm a lot older than everyone.
What's the CD?
It's a certificate of deposit. It's the difference between liquid money and money that's not liquid. So, for example, a checking account, a savings account, a money market, these are all liquid. A checking account is something that you only want enough money in to cover your expenses. So, generally it's not more than, say, $500 more than your expenses in a checking account. And the reason for that is because you don't make money off of that. There's no interest, there's no benefits to having money into a checking account other than you can easily access it. The same goes for a general savings account. So for a savings account, these are like rainy day funds, just emergencies. So if your car breaks down, or if you end up in a hospital, or you end up with, your child gets sick and you have to pay for those things. Emergencies only. Yes, it is liquid, which means that you can get to it easily. But the point of a savings account is to have that money and not get to it. A money market is similar to a savings account, except you get better interest rates. So, for example, I have a money market. It's with SmartyPig, which just got bought out by Sallie Mae, which I feel a little betrayed by because I'm like, Sallie Mae. I know you. But I get really good interest rates on my money market. Versus my savings account. So even though I have a lot more money in savings than my money market, I'm making more money off of my money market than my savings. Does that make sense? Okay. So knowing what to do with the money that you have and where to put it is going to create more money out of that. In order to create more money, the best way to not spend money is to only use cash. If you get a certain amount of allowance, we're going to talk about budgets, that's what I'm building up to. You get an allowance each week that you're like, okay, I have $20 that I can spend on anything I want. And then I've got my $200 that I can only spend on groceries this month. So you have this amount of money that you set aside for each part of your life. So utilities, rent, whatever it is that you spend money on. And those vary. And so every month you have a budget, but you need to adjust that budget because sometimes we say, I'm only gonna spend $20 on fast food. And then at the end of it, you go, where did all my money go? And then you check your trash bin and it's like full of junk. And you go, oh, well that was unrealistic. So maybe I need to readjust my budget. So you have your fixed expenses. So these are things that don't change. These are the same every month. These are things like your tuition, things like your rent, things like tuition or loan payments. I said tuition. And then you have your flexible expenses. So they vary from month to month. So these are credit card payments, utilities change, how much that you're spending on food, for example, groceries, that's a flexible expense. What are things that you buy every month, but you're never sure how much it's gonna cost you? Gas,
Groceries.
groceries, yeah.
Baby stuff.
Bills like electricity.
Baby stuff,
Baby stuff.
babies are expensive.
Too expensive. We shouldn't even be that expensive.
They should be
Stop playing.
So, a grand plan. You have to know where you're at and where you're going to figure out how to get there. So this is the same for goals, and if you're in my class, you know I talk about this. You gotta know where you're going before you can get there, and so having a plan with your finances is exactly the same. Where do you wanna be in 5 years? Where do you wanna be in 20 years? You have to figure out what you want your life to look like in order to know what you need to do now, because it all goes back to that delayed gratification. You know, would you rather have $1 million today, or I can give you a penny today, and I'm gonna tell you that penny is gonna double every day for the next 30 days? Which would you rather have?
The $1 million today.
$1,000 today, cause there's more money coming from the $1,000 than you doubling the penny daily.
Arisha's got a plan. She's got a master plan for $1 million. If I give you a penny today, in 28 days, that penny will equal $1,342,177.28.
Hold on, we're doubling each of.
30
like,
days,
the-
that would be over $5.2 million, which leads to the point, is delayed gratification. If you put off what you want today, just a little bit longer, you'll have more than you ever dreamed
I
of.
suck at math.
Which is why you need to evaluate your wants versus needs. Is this something that you need? Is this something that can wait? Is this something that will be more gratifying in the future? So thinking about that, do you want this today, or is this gonna be better next year? Is this gonna be better in 10 years? I bought a car. It's not a new car, it's not a fancy car, but I paid cash for it. And so now I saved up that money. It took me a long time, and I worked a whole lot more than I wanted to, but I don't have a note on that car. And so I have that asset now that doesn't cost me extra every month.
You're late.
Recording your purchases. Who keeps track of the money that they spend? How do you do that?
Keeping the
Calculator.
receipts.
You keep a calculator, is it a running calculator?
Yeah, it's a running calculator.
How does that work?
I have money that I currently have, and then everything I spend, I deduct from it, and then just like make sure like I save that amount that I have, just like what I need, what I don't need, and I just like that's how I manage money.
And what do you do with your receipts?
I keep them, and I look over them to make sure they didn't jet me off.
Okay, so once you kind of evaluate your receipt and decide that that's the money you spent, do you just put it in an envelope somewhere? Do you revisit it?
Nope. I mean, I look at it to see, because, okay, when I first bought all my stuff to go here, I looked at my receipt to see how, cause I get the same stuff every time I go to the store. So I just basically look at the receipts each time to make sure I didn't spend more money last time than I did this
And
time.
if you did, you go
I go back.
Mhm.
Cause, last time this was $3.25, today is $4, what's going on?
Yeah.
Taxes.
It was $3.25 plus tax.
Courtney?
I don't live on campus, so we literally have a notebook in my apartment, and it's like how much we have to spend each month, and then we deduct all of our bills, like rent, electric, all that, and then see how much we have to like spend after that.
Andrew, did you raise your hand?
I don't have like a system, I just like,
You
just
just keep a
always like
running
here,
total
like,
every month?
I know like the dollars and cents in my bank account, so I just like,
Okay. Do you reconcile your bank account against your, bank statement every month?
No.
No, you just trust your bank? No, you don't trust your bank, cause you know that's subject to human error, yes. Sometimes they get it wrong. I read this book, it's called 30 Days to 1K, and it's written by Adam Carroll, and he says, how do you save $1,000 in a month? And one of the first tasks in this book is to get a notebook and write down everything that you spent, how you paid for it, what it was, and how much it cost you. And so you start by putting the date for the next 2 weeks at the top of each page, and then every day you write down what you spent, how you spent it, was it cash, was it credit, what was it? And then at the end of those 30 days, you total it up. And I realized or not 30 days, that was 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, I spent $30 in coffee. So, because that became apparent to me, I obviously made some life changes. So just kind of knowing what it is that you're spending money on. The purple is the necessary stuff. And the green is the non-necessary stuff.
That's a lot of
So
green.
this wants versus needs, right? And so I did a self-evaluation here of things that I could probably live without.
What's
And
that orange?
the orange were things that I put on my credit card.
Oh, okay.
And that came to $40 in 2 weeks. Credit cards, we'll get to that. So kind of taking a self-evaluation, take your own temperature. If you want more money, look at what you're doing with the money that you have. And then that way you can kind of evaluate whether or not you're making the appropriate choices for your grand plan. And then at the end of those 2 weeks, at the end of that month, kind of evaluate, was this manageable? Which is, a confirmation of your suspicions. My budget, I keep running over it. It doesn't make sense. I don't know why this isn't working. Because it's not realistic to you. So look at what you're doing. And at the end of every month, say, was this budget right for me? Is this working with my life, with my spending habits? Do I need to just rein it in with some self-discipline, or is this just not realistic? Saying that my electric bill is gonna be $100 every month. Like, that's just not feasible. It's just not realistic for the house that I live in. So being able to notice that and then adjust for it. You need to be aware, and you have to have a plan. If you don't have a plan, you're just not gonna get anywhere, basically. Just leaving it to chance, and if you come into money, the chances of you just blowing that money. For example, people who win the lottery are more likely to go broke than people who don't. Because they've never had that much finances or that much financial responsibility, and so because they suddenly have this huge sum of money, they're more likely to just blow it and go bankrupt. Look it up, it's real. So the ugly things. These are the ugly things. Credit. Well, okay. How many of you have a credit score or credit that you're aware of?
Credit Karma.
Credit Karma is not free. They sell your information.
Exposed.
They sell your information, and that's why you get a lot of weird phone calls and strange things in your email and strange things at your house.
That's true.
It is true. Listen.
I actually have a student credit card, and every month it lets me check my credit for free for being a student through Discover.
That's awesome. I have a Discover card. Yeah, and it does.
Discover your benefits, that's what.
The ugly thing about money is that the only way to build credit is by utilizing debt. By not just spending, but spending somebody else's money and then paying it back. And so if you have student loans, like I do, an abundance of, which was just me making poor choices because I wasn't financially aware or literate when I was in college. So as when I met many of you, I said, I made bad choices, and I hope that you don't make those bad choices. So being aware that when you get a refund check, that's not free money. That's not a refund. That is a loan, and that has interest rates. And so interest, which is something that's good and bad. In the student loan case, it's bad because the money that you borrow will be less than the money that you owe, inevitably, every time. And so being able to calculate that when you pull that money out so that in the future you are aware of what it is that you're going to be paying back is going to be in your best benefit. Credit cards. We mentioned savings earlier, a savings account. When I was in college, there was no way that I had enough income to fund a savings account. I worked for minimum wage, like 12 hours a week. That was just enough to get by. So having a credit card only for emergencies and not doing silly things like buying 1,000 pairs of shoes is important, especially if you're a young adult and you're just coming into the world and you don't have a lot of income right now. So just being aware that when you do have a credit card, that you are able to only put money on it that you can afford. So for example, your car breaks down and you have to replace some parts on that. It's gonna cost you $200. Well, where am I gonna get $200? So I have this credit card. I can pay $50 back a month, but the minimum payment is $35. So as long as I'm able to compensate and overpay from that minimum payment, you're going to be able to work through that faster, and then knowing that, okay, I can pay this off in this amount of time versus only putting the minimum payment down, and then you're never gonna close off that debt, essentially. Interest. There's bad interest and there's good interest. Bad interest is obviously things that we purchase and we owe interest on. So student loans, credit cards, things like that. Good interest, things like the savings accounts, the money markets, and the mutual funds are things that we put money up for and other people pay us to use that money. And so you get interest off of that, and that's good interest because that's working in your favor. Most of the time people fall into the bad interest because they're living outside of their means and they're trying to look wealthier than they are. Keeping up with the Joneses. The Joneses are probably in debt. There's this series, the Millionaire Next Door. It's people who live moderately but are wealthy because they're not living outside of their means and they're able to afford the life that they're comfortable with. They're not trying to create a life that's outside of what's realistic for them. Whoa. Okay. Wealth, which comes to wealth. It's measured in time. And so the life that you're comfortable with, that you can afford without having to work, for as long as you're able to afford that life, is how wealthy that you are. And in order to do that, you have to maximize your assets and minimize your liabilities. So this is good interest, bad interest. These are things that make you money, things that take money away. So if you're able to find things in your life that you can capitalize on, then you're going to be wealthier than if you're constantly spending money on things that you don't necessarily need. If you are interested in making money off of the money that you have, if you want more with less, if you are really just wanting to know how money works, these are just a few of the books that I've read over the past, 4 months that I thought were really beneficial. They were really easy to digest. They offered a lot of information and they broke it down to a level for money beginners, basically. So I encourage you to look into these books. If you have any questions, I will take those.
I have a question. Like do you recommend that like young people like get credit cards and build credit only if they have, like, you know what I mean, like only buy coffee on it or stuff like that?
I wouldn't say coffee. I recommend that you have at least one credit card, but I recommend that you do that smartly. And so, for example, on my credit card, I only put groceries and gasoline. And those are things that I know that I can pay for at the end of the month. So, and those are consistent things for me. So that's what I do with my credit card. So if you don't have a credit card, but you need, say, credit for whatever it is that you're looking for in your future, whether that's buying a house, whether that's getting a lien on a car, whatever it is that you're wanting, you're gonna need credit. And so, yes, but do so with caution. Did that answer your question? Kind of.
I think what she's saying is make sure that if you're gonna purchase something, that it's something you can pay off in that 1 month, so your interest isn't continually building through. You don't wanna go out and spend $1,000 on shoes or something, and then know you're not gonna be able to pay that back right away, and then you have to think about all the interest that it's gonna accumulate on there. Cause I'm gonna say, I'll say all, but I'm sure there might be some out there, but the majority of them have an interest rate, and then you gotta watch what interest rate you'll get on that credit card too.
Yeah, if you're gonna get a credit card, shop around. There are hundreds of different credit card companies. If you're here on campus, US Bank offers a credit card through your checking account. And then that is typically, like a year to 18 months interest free. So if you do have something that you wanna purchase, that's gonna cost you more than 1 month to pay off, every month, out before that year, 18 months expires, you can continue that balance over without acquiring that interest on it.
Also having a lower limit, so you can have a limit that's like $300. Like start off small, like don't let them put like $800 on there, cause then you're like, woo! $800 later, you're gonna have, it's gonna be like 1,000 cause you're gonna have so much interest. Like make sure it's a really low like starting limit.
And then as you acquire credit and as you get more comfortable with the concept of spending money that's not yours to spend money that is yours, which is weird, then you can increase your credit limit.
I mean, like, building on that, if you get like a student credit card, normally they'll give you cash back on it if you get good grades. So like, with mine, I have Discover, so
More
like
baby
then they
products.
just sent me a thing and were like, what's your college GPA? So like I told them and then they asked like what school I went to, so then obviously I put here. And then I got a $20 cashback bonus for having a GPA that met their requirements, which is only like a 3.0 or higher. So it's really not a big, like, they're not expecting too much of you, but they still give you money back.
Get credit cards.
I think it
I
made
don't
pretty
even
cool.
believe in
But I mean,
Discover.
like you said, keep in mind to only put things on it that you can afford to pay off, because
I didn't go to credit card till I was 25, and so that I was like, cause it scared me.
You hear that? Yeah,
Yeah.
don't get a credit card till you're 25.
But also I didn't understand how it worked, and so, because my parents were fiscally irresponsible people, they still are, and so because those were the examples that I grew up with, I was like, I don't want that in my life.
Boss man.
So I was afraid. You don't have to be, like, if you go in there smartly and you know what you're getting into, then it's not a scary thing.
Better hope your parents don't see that recording what you just said about it.
They know.
So like, what if you like are on like the same account with somebody? So will that affect like each other's credit or?
Sorry?
Like me and my mom share an account, and so I have my own credit card, but it's still linked to the same account like we're in. So will that make the credit go up higher? Since you're like lower taking out of it.
Well, your credit's not based off of like a checking account or
So
anything.
that's basically like what's using your credit card.
It's based on your credit, yeah. Like, anytime that you borrow money, it's based on how you repay that money.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, if you wanna set up like a personal budget, or if you have questions about your own personal spending, you can always bring those to me. That's kinda what I'm here for, so, thanks for coming, guys.